Thank you very much, Shruti. Thanks a lot to the entire team at Tvam for putting this thing together. There is a great need for doing the talking that we're going to do in the next 1 hour, of which I will speak for about 30 minutes, and then I will hope that you will take it on with some questions. So I may not go into the complete details at this point of time, depending on your interest, which will be conveyed to me by your questions. We will take it forward. So this work of Unmute.help actually starts with the onset of COVID and us going into a lockdown in everywhere in the world, which came as a big shock to many artists. Some of them just took a long time to find their feet, but others decided to find new and creative ways by which they were going to continue with their artistry. Amongst these ways that they found were the online life that the arts acquired. There was always online presence, but it was minuscule compared to the live presence. And therefore, suddenly, when all of us got onto this new medium of social media, of Zoom and other online spaces, what we ended up finding ourselves dealing with was a whole new vocabulary of things. For instance, COVID time compelled us to confront new things. All of these things fell under the rubric of arts and the law. I refer, for example, to concepts like copyright, plagiarism, contracts, and regrettably, sexual harassment in the arts. I'll take a minute at this point to give you a little expansive understanding of how and what I meant by that. So, immediately many people went onto line and decided to do Zoom festivals and stuff. And very enthusiastically, all of us would connect to those festivals and suddenly find the screen going blank. Now, believe you me, many people in India are not digital savvy at all and technologically savvy. So if you ask those people who were organizing these festivals, what happened? Was it, why are we getting a blank screen? They turn around and say, we don't know. Whereas the most logical answer is there must have been a copyright issue. So even to get the word copyright or the concept of copyright to enter people's head took a while. People would give explanations which were not impossible but unlikely. Oh, somebody had recorded it on MP3 and somebody else had done MP4, and then this was a Vimeo and all. And all of that then gets assembled and you can still do it. But you cannot do it if there is a copyright issue that enters the whole situation. Next was plagiarism. Now, for years, we know that people have picked up entire researches and declared them their own. People have passed off articles by just changing the name. And either we were a little scared of not bringing up these issues, or we couldn't be too sure there was the possibility you could get away with it. And many, many diggaj people, real icons, have managed to get away with this sort of thing. It happens all the time. So, but when you went on through the net, all these groups we were part of, WhatsApp groups, there was suddenly hysteria. Hey, he's doing my talk, he's reading my paper, and he's not even giving me the credit. So plagiarism became a very big issue. The third thing I wanted to draw your attention to, which suddenly came up, was contracts. The biggest renegade of contracts was the government of India. It had given grants. So we have a 75-25 rule. You get only 75% pehle in advance. And then after you have put in your utilization certificate and sort of ticked off all the compliances and finished, closed the deal, you get the remaining 25%, and it doesn't happen immediately. It happens after a few days, but nevertheless, suddenly nothing. People normally do the whole production and 75, sometimes they do add some more money of their own, hoping that the 25 will come and offset that investment that they have made. And then there will be other bookings, and that everything will fall finally in a balanced manner. But the 25 didn't come in, and there were no other bookings. So people had really blown up their savings, and nobody had read the contracts carefully. Every MOU, every grant document has a contractual element in it, but people had not read it. And the final straw, which actually broke my back in a way, was sexual harassment in art spaces. I will talk a lot more about it, so let's proceed with the next slide. Now, before independence itself, while the arts played a very big role in the freedom struggle, the building of the idea of the nation, we saw some changes that were happening. We saw the institutionalization of the arts. So from learning from gurus, who finding the right guru was also such a big thing. You didn't know who was the best person for you. Suddenly you actually had the choice of going and enrolling in an institution like Kalakshetra. Similarly, there were many others. There was the Kerala Kala Mandalam, there was Kala Vikash Kendra in Odisha, then later the Kathak Kendra, Sangeet Bharati, all these institutions came. So you saw the institutionalization. Kerala Kalamandalam, as I mentioned, Rabindranath Tagore, Shanti Niketan. These were all examples of institutionalization, and we see them starting from a pre-independence period. So they were quite well established by then. Why am I going on about the institutionalization? Because while most learning in the arts is tabulated, you do not have a coursework as such. The brilliant guru makes you do the same thing for 6 months and does not explain why 6 months you're doing this. There wouldn't be. But now with the institutions, there was a rationality to the pedagogy, to the rules of administration, and many things. So one hoped that some of the ills of the earlier system could be repaired. Okay. Further, our Constitution in Article 14 talked about equality of all Indian citizens, artists, non-artists, traditional artists, modern artists, male artists, female artists. Everybody was looked upon as equally, or so we thought. But that was far from the truth. One of the things that you could notice right away is that the traditional practitioners of what we today call the classical arts, namely people like the Tawaiffs, like the Maharis, like the Devdasis, were diminished and not given exactly the same position as a urban, educated, upper class, upper caste dancer, often female. The same situation you could see even between the folk and the classical dance binary. So on Republic Day, at the Republic Day parade, we see a lot of folk dance. There's a lot of exuberance and color, reflecting the diversity end of the philosophy of unity in diversity. So, but what does it say about how we look at dance, for instance? It says quite clearly that for certain dances, the outdoors, the street is good enough a venue. But for others, it had to be the Rashtrapati Bhavan and other national platforms and formal stages. And I refer here to the classical dances of India. So was Article 14 actually in play? Unfortunately, it is not. And that is the reality of the arts in India. Some are more worthy of celebration than others. Okay. And here's a picture. We have Indrani Rahman. It's a historical picture, rather well known, who performed at at the reception that was held for President and Mrs. Kennedy. We have the Prime Minister there. We have a future Prime Minister on the other side in Indira Gandhi. That is the kind of access that the classical dancers enjoyed. But the folk dancers, as I told you, the street was good enough a space for them. So the central figure in the entire pedagogy of the arts is the guru. And once institutionalization happened, one would have assumed that the guru is now following certain patterns of behavior. And this picture is only a representational image. What I have to say later about gurus has nothing to do with the guru about whom Sarah Morelli wrote, or the wonderful, wonderful Guru Kalyana Sundaramji, who I have known personally, enjoyed my conversations with him, and have the deepest respect for him and his family for the amazing work that they have done in Mumbai. Now, once you had the guru as the center of your life, even in an institution, what we then encounter is a conflict between two ideas: the idea of modernity that is contained in the institutionalization of the arts, and the idea of bhakti, which is exemplified in these two dohas of Kabir: Guru Gobind duo khade kake lagu paye, Balihari Guru Aapne Govindiyo Bataye. I think everybody knows this. It's a very well-known doha. If God and Guru appear before you together, who should you bow to first? You should bow to the Guru, who shows you the way to God. Kabira te nar andh hai, Guru ko kehte aur, Hari roothe, Guru thor hai, Guru roothe, nahi thor. Translation is that those of you who look at the Guru and God as separate beings are as good as blind. If God turns his face away from you, you can depend on your Guru. But if your Guru turns his face away from you, then you cannot get solace anywhere. All of us who have had the privilege of learning classical Indian dance actually come from this Guru Bhakti Parampara. And we are born to do that. And we are trained to do it, not only in the large scale, but on a daily basis, in the touching of the feet of the Guru, in the offering of, of dakshinas. All of these ways we celebrate the Guru as a image, as the central focus of our bhakti in the process of learning dance. But things are not as ideal as they should have been. So in 2018, following the hashtag Me Too, Time Has Come, etc., that was happening elsewhere in the world, in 2018, hashtag Me Too happened in Chennai as well. And it was reacted to. Madras Music Academy took the first action against its then secretary and changed also those who were called out in a list that was released, an unofficial list, but a list nevertheless that was released then. And without any evaluation, two things happened. Those who had been referred to in the list or in the Me Too were momentarily put down, taken off the schedule, and pending investigation. And the second thing was an IC, Internal Complaint Committee, was set up to deal with such issues. The government of India followed next. This same secretary that year won the Sangeet Natak Academy Award. The year was 2018. Actually, he got the award, was announced in 2017, but in 2018 he was to be presented the award. And in a very surprise and for the first time move, the government actually requested him or informed him, don't bother coming for the award, and it'll reach you. And that's exactly what happened. Suddenly there was this blip, and this person against whom many and serious allegations had been made was almost invisibilized in the whole process. By itself, some of these issues raise questions, and I'm sure they're coming to your mind, and I'm sure we're going to talk about them later. But for the moment, in the interest of the smooth flow of this presentation, let me take it on ahead. Many people reacted to it. Dance scholar activist Swarnmalya Ganesh, a fellow Fulbrighter like me, worked to foreground the issue to get clarity on what exactly is meant by sexual harassment. And our law says workplace. Sexual harassment, it's called the Prevention of Sexual Harassment in the Workplace, POSH law. Does an art space qualify as a workspace? Where does it begin and where does it end? These are some of the questions that come to mind. Who all get covered under the POSH Act in an art space? Regulars, people who are on payrolls, or even occasional visitors or vendors? Many questions. So people like Swarnmalya, by bringing up these issues to the forefront, was able to start a conversation going and trying to come to some answers. The contemporary dance group Gati, which was at that time leading a course at the Ambedkar University, created a composite program to fight sexual harassment, including definitions, standard training material, and detailed IEC material as well. And I remember very well that when I saw what they had produced, I had a smile on my face when I read the poster that said, "Leave your shoes and egos out." You may turn around and ask me, what am I trivializing this whole issue for? Why am I saying shoes and egos? Because at the end of it, any sexual harassment problem is a ego, power, that kind of problem. We can discuss that later. Let's proceed. Other dancers, theatre activist, Sanjukta Wagh, Bismillah Khan Awadi as well, co-founder of the Beach Collective, did deep thinking, not her alone, the collective, did deep thinking on this issue and actually put together a program that was well thought out, which had speakers who could add to the discourse. Interestingly, at that conference, which happened in 2018, that they did a public conference kind of a thing, the well-known musician and actress Neela Bhagwat, who some of you may not know, she is an octogenarian, I think by now, she's definitely in the 8th decade of her life, was once a Kathak dancer. Her guru is from the first family of Kathak. She actually said something in that 2018 conference organized by Beach. She said, the guru was great, the man wasn't. I thought that was such a smart way of saying something so loaded with the sharpness of minimum words. And suddenly it created a furor. The guru, now long dead, 50 years. He's been gone 50 years. We had the disciple of the guru's wife who looked upon her female guru and the guru's husband as my parents, guru parents, decided to take cudgels and sent her a notice saying, you are defaming my guru when he's not there to defend him. And why are you doing it 50 years too late? What she had not recognized was that in the year 2002, I think, maybe 2000 or 2002, Neela ji had already written in Lakshmi, the Sparrow production, publishing house, of feminist sort of a publishing house. She had already written a story on this issue. And so it was there in the public domain. But because we have such a silence around these issues, it was not noticed then. But in the hullabaloo of the 2018 Me Too, #MeToo, it now became important. And till the other day, she was served a notice for defamation. And it was because of my work in Unmute that I got to know about it. And I actually spoke to the lawyer who fought the case for Priya Ramani in the MJ Akbar incident. And that lawyer, Rebecca John, iconic lawyer, turned around and said, on these issues, which were all legal terms, that means normal people like you and I do not understand these legal terms. I am actually developing a vocabulary for all of this. So locus standi and forensics and all are now part of my life and conception. And I hope that I can pass it on when I talk to you all. Okay, so anyway, Neela ji is now reassured that things are okay. Meanwhile, in September, I think it was the 5th of September that I opened the newspaper and I came across the shocking news that there was not one but a series of allegations by the many students at the Drupad Sansthan in Bhopal who had made allegations against all three, not one, not two, but all three Gundecha brothers. And these are allegations. And like I said, the Gurukul there would take 100 students. Most of them were foreigners. And so the combination of foreigners and Indian students together, they spoke up, finally. What I understood later when I spoke to the survivors is that there had been an early attempt under this enthusiasm of the Me Too 2018 to bring up the issue, but at that time, for various reasons, it was hushed up and the matter was pushed under the carpet. No change happened in attitude. So it wasn't that there was a mid-course correction that everybody did with their behavior, but things continued. For me, it was a big personal shock. Drupad is my favorite form of music, and the Gundechas were my favorite singers. In fact, so fond was I of them that not only would they stay in my house when they would come to Delhi, in fact, to date, the key to my house is with them. But for 6 months, one of their students stayed non-stop with me. And I was very happy because when these, whether it was the Gundechas themselves, they used to have the bedroom next to my own bedroom so that I could actually hear them. I'd wake up to them doing riyaz and all that. It was an ideal situation. Nothing in our conversations prepared me. I thought that Akhilesh brown shirt was a little badmash type, but that was, I mean, some people just have a little more chutzpah to them and some are more sober. And I always thought that this is how it was. So I was completely blown. I had played hostess to their families. And so it was a little shock for me when this happened. But what startled me further is that one is the shock that it happened. The other is that it was them that were the focus of the allegations. But the biggest shock then was the way the government was reacting to this. It was as if it was business as always, as usual. So Umakant was brought to inaugurate a women's music festival, whereas Akhilesh Brown, who is the Pakhavaji, was actually billed to play during the Tansen festival. Regrettably, Ramakant, who is on the on this end with the dark hair, he had a sudden, untimely and shocking death just before these allegations broke out. So there was this doubt in many people's minds: should one speak ill of the dead, and this and that. So that it was a very complex situation. Okay. Meanwhile, the Gundechas are very well connected in Madhya Pradesh with the police and judiciary, and so the complainants felt that they had a losing hand. Now, you must understand the way the criminal justice system works in India. In the first place, POSH, Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace, allows you to have an interim provision by which you can handle the matter without it going into the proper criminal justice system. The option of going into the criminal justice system remains. What is the criminal justice system? Going to the lawyer, going to FIR in a police station, going to the police, collecting evidence, handing it in. So now the issue is, do you even understand what is evidence? Because, kitni bari I have heard people say, oh, he did this to me, he hurt me and all that. But you know what? only that which is contained in the Evidence Act is evidence. So amongst the things that could be in it are emails, pictures, WhatsApp messages. Now, WhatsApp messages is also a little dubious ground, as you just figured out from a recently very public case, or whether WhatsApp messages make the claim or not. Anyway, you have to go and file in the FIR yourself to pursue it and all. Now, what happened is, in reaction to what had happened in September, by September, many of the foreign students decided that they will go try and reclaim whatever they can of their lives, and had left India. Now they had to come back again under unwilling thing. They were not willing to take the second loss, because after all, in coming in the first place, many of them had put careers, marriages, family, and spent a lot of money to be able to come to India and stay here. So meanwhile, the Gundechas continue to wield a lot of power and wealth. They still claim they can make and break careers. And I wonder, what is the reason that we continue to be enablers and have so many complicit in the process? So this picture, Swar Siddhi, is actually a documentary that was made on them. No reference to any allegations, no reference to anything uncomfortable. And it went on to win an award at the 11th Dada Saheb Phalke Film Festival last year. No control on such things. They ran an institution that had 100 people already learning, but they must have had at least another 30, 40 coming as staff or as vendors and all that. You know, when you have 9 people, not 9 people on your payroll, 9 people coming together, then you are mandated by a parliamentary act, the POSH Act, to have an internal complaint committee. So there was no internal complaint committee. Rapidly, they put together the internal complaint committee when the issue became bigger than they thought, bigger than certainly 2018 when they were able to stymie it. And this time around, they put together the first internal complaint committee. This complaint committee was mostly what I call the chacha, chachi, taya, tai kind of, family, friends and family complaint committee. In any complaint committee, you need to have a minimum of 5 people. The main head should be either a senior person from the institution with an understanding of law, feminism, and legal provisions that could be used in favor of the women. There should be dominance of women members, and there should definitely be one external member, not from an NGO kind of thing, but not an NGO that is dealing with, say, animal welfare, but an NGO that is dealing with feminist issues or labor or something like that, So I'm afraid the first committee that they put up rather hastily had no such person in it. So then, under the public pressure, they had to recast the committee. Also, many of the committee members themselves resigned and said, we don't want to be, we know you do well, and this is a conflict of interest and all that. So the next time they put together somebody which had a Dhasu kind of central figure, and it was more respect. Excuse me. And as was to be expected, the committee started its work in a very methodical and timely manner. They stuck to the rhythms. They gave all the letters, instructions correctly. They thoroughly investigated it. And then just before the second wave of COVID happened, they had the report became public. Not very public, because I told you that the Gundechas enjoy some power and pelf, but it was enough for us to know that the allegations had been vindicated, that the committee stood with the girls. By the way, I must mention that the POSH Act mentions only women, does not mention men, does not mention anyone who identifies as a woman. And these are its few shortcomings. But in this case, there was no such problem. It was a clear gender binary that was working. So while we see how okay, so when it came up with this report, I must also mention, before any action could be taken, in the confusion of the first wave setting in, second wave setting in, the Gundechas employed their right to go to the criminal justice system and appealed in the High Court of Madhya Pradesh, which is the High Court of Madhya Pradesh, and claimed that they had objections to the way the committee conducted its proceedings. Effectively, it has just delayed the closure. The committee had given certain suggestions. It had given suggestions of how certain of the family had to stay away from this institution for 1 year, to have therapy, to have awareness trainings, to have, to give reassurance to the students who were there. But all of this flew out of the window the minute they moved court, and the matter has become sub judice. And my talking even this much is a matter that I have to be very careful of. And that's why I keep saying allegations, alleged, and should you ever talk about this, please be careful. As I told you, there is a vocabulary and a method in which you are supposed to talk about these issues. Meanwhile, what is equally startling is the way the law is becoming a little regressive. We had this famous case of an underage child. Now, when it comes to a below 18 child, whether in a workplace or in an art space or anything like that, a different law comes into place, which is even more stringent and tight and non-bailable. That's called the POCSO Act. Yeah, POCSO. Everybody says POSCO, galti se. And I always tell them, no, stop for a moment before you say the word and remember that C comes before S. So POCSO Act. And one judge in Mumbai talked about this girl whose breast was fondled by her guru, who was actually her tuition teacher, maths teacher, or something like that. And she said, it's okay, he can be exonerated because there was no skin-to-skin touch. But the POSH Act does not say skin to skin. It talks about intent. It does not even talk about physical touch. It talks about distance actions, a particular way of looking, a particular way of winking, of, all this lippy, shippy business and all that. It doesn't even talk touch. So, aap kaise skin to skin keh sakte hain? So this was a worrisome development. And of course, there was such an outrage, and the matter has been taken up, I think, at the Supreme Court level now to say that this is rubbish, no skin to skin, and we should look after our children better. Now, in another case, and this is a very famous case of sexual harassment, which is the Tehelka case, Tarun Tejpal, the judgment at the lower court said that, no, I think we can't take the victim's statement seriously because she did not behave as a victim should. There is no reference to how, there is no ideal way that you have to behave. You can behave in any way. 50 years later, you can rake up the subject. That is what the law says. It also, and morally, tell me, anybody who goes through this, and this is such a subjective feeling, anybody who goes through this is like extreme, you have to believe them because only they experience it. You cannot experience it. So expecting somebody to behave in an X way or a Y way, or, that's the thing. And the third surprising similar judgment that has come recently from Mumbai, and so at present it applies only to Mumbai. I don't know whether it's been knocked off or it continues, is that there should be no media reporting on a sexual harassment case. Why? The woman has to be protected. But if the media doesn't report, then how will many of these happen in camera? So how will people know that the victim or survivor has got her just rights honored? Okay, so I'm talking all this about posh wash. I just had to introduce you to the lady out of whose life emerged the special law of India. She's Bhavari Devi. She was a community worker in Rajasthan. She was gang raped in 1992 on caste issues, on caste lines, for having stopped a child marriage in a high caste person's house. The government did not give her justice. I mean, the judiciary did not give her justice and said that no high caste person would ever rape a low caste person. Oh my God. Do you know how wrong that is? How incorrect it is? It is factually incorrect. Anyway, out of the objections and the protests that emerged from this judgment to Bhavari Devi, who still has not got justice, she was supported by her husband, and that's why the matter even reached this point. And I must tell you a very interesting twist that the legal advisors to her did. They did not present this as a criminal case. They said it is a human rights aberration. And that's how posh law emerged out of it in 2013. Imagine, her rape is 1992. 1995 is that judgment that says no high caste person would rape a low caste woman. And it took so many years for this law to come. So it has been with a great fight that all these things have happened. Anyway, September was the story of the Gundecha brothers, and December 15th, we opened the newspaper and we got another shock, because at the Premium Kathak Kendra, the Kathak Institute, Premium Kathak Institute, the Pakhavach player whose image is depicted here, Upadhyaya, he was taken into custody, police custody, and then Tihar jail for allegations of molesting a 23-year-old girl child. Now, for many years at the Kathak Kendra, there had been a little buzzing about things not being so good and all that. But nobody came out. Between 2018 to 2020, I wrote a lot about sexual harassment in Nartaki in my column Soch, but everybody would turn around and tell me, you're writing only about us in the southern part of India. What about the northern part of India? We could not write till somebody had come out and spoken. And once spoken, then you can rake the issue up in different ways. So anyway, this is when it happened, December 2020, 15th December, and there was a complete panic in the arts community, especially in the northern parts. In response to the Gundechas, I had started a series of public lectures called Arts and the Law, where I had an artist and a lawyer or domain expert to interact and bring out issues. This is the first time we were hearing these things. It was a very successful program. It ran up to 15th of December, starting from the 13th of October, and it generated a post-event life on each of the 5 subjects that we have taken. You're only seeing the post on sexual harassment. There were 5 subjects: copyright, plagiarism, contracts, and obscenity, because you remember UAPA had started being used very extensively on stand-up comics. So when does art become troublesome? When does art become anti-state? Does it ever become anti-state? If it lives up to its philosophy of showing a mirror of society to society, can it become anti-state? So these were some of the questions that these series produced. However, after the December incident, it gained momentum. Now it was not me working alone. It was people joining me. And as they say, karma badhta gaya. I started alone, but karma badhta gaya. And with Beej, we did an unmute. This was the first time we used the term unmute. The term unmute is given to us by Beej with the permission to use it as long as we want to for this thing. We did a training with a sexual harassment trainer. Now, corporate sexual harassment trainers look at things differently from the kind of way we needed to have things being looked at when we were looking at the arts. Arshiya Sherwani spent close to 4 weeks on a daily hour to hour call with me as we prepared her for what were the unique situations in which arts play out. Someday, if I get a chance to do a training with you, we will dwell more on this. But January, we had the first unmute, the Mumbai unmute. And in February, we had the second Unmute, which was the Calcutta Unmute. We just kept doing it differently, but we got a very good turnout. And many of the stakeholders, as you can see from the bigger poster, the one that is a brownish kind of a poster, how many people participated in it. And as this ended, I mentioned that, maybe we should begin some work immediately. And I suggested to Paramita Saha, who was one of the co-organizers, I said, maybe you should start it in your institution. And she said, no, we want to do some city-based activity. And all is well, I have things under control, but things are never under control. You never know when things blow up. And almost 3 weeks later, or maybe 4 weeks later from that conversation, I got a call from her saying, it's trouble in paradise. And it took us 1 month to convince the organization where it had happened that they need to do trainings, put into place posh systems. And we did that training and put into space. Once I was doing that training, it was a 2-day training, I realized that Calcutta wanted to hear it, sure, because they know the knowledge levels were abysmal about the laws, POXO, POSH, any of the laws, because, other laws kick in as well. In case there's a caste differential, then the Scheduled Tribe, Scheduled Caste Act also kicks in. It becomes even more complex. Then there's transgender, there's the dignity of women angle that can be added. In case there is use of social media or telephone, you get the IT laws also operating in it. So we decided to do this, a new series of 7, because there were new communities that Bengal threw up. The large child artist community, the very strong transgender community. So we created more the disabled community and the community of differently abled. So we were compelled to do a larger thing in a vernacular language. If you ask me, this is the way forward in as many languages as possible. So I urge you, I understand that some of you are from India, that if any of you have and the capacity to get a training done, Cree Foundation and Unmute.help does these trainings for you, and we do it free. I always do my trainings completely free. So please call us and we'd be happy to help you. We had 7 episodes, 7 sessions. On the 4th session, my 2 partners for this 7 Spectrum series, Paramita and Sumabha, they sat me down on the thing. There was no talk about, they said, look, very urgently, everybody's asking us to put this material permanently available, not like on this occasional public platform that you will put together sometimes. And I thought it was a brilliant idea, because it takes a lot of effort to put together a public platform thing. But if we have it all on one place, then we can go ahead. So Unmute.help is that place where you will find information. What is the law, the simplified versions of the law, what are the steps you can take, etc., etc. So it also has a calendar on it. It has a little bit, we write an article every month in Nartaki. I cheat and I sometimes sneak in other issues as part of my ongoing column there called Soch. I take the opportunity of every opportunity. I mean, my friends will soon stop talking to me, but I have given 5 years to correct this imbalance, this sense of entitlement, the sense that women can be abused via power, controlled. And I just want to tell you that it's not just the gurus, okay? But sometimes the guru is just much maligned. I have noticed critics, writers, sponsors, newspaper journalists, Orcon. Yeah, anyone who can make things, bureaucrats, anybody who can make your access easy or your visibility easy will want to transact that right and that power for ill-gotten gains. Okay, so that's the 3 of us, and we have been picked up very fortunately by people who can amplify our voices. Akhila at Alap did a wonderful interview, nice long one, asked me 1 million questions. I was very happy to answer all of them. She wants to do a training, so stay tuned or write to her, something like that. Maybe that will put pressure on her, because I keep sending her gentle reminders. But this was a subject whose time had definitely come. Our public response, our response in the press has been phenomenal. And we get whole page articles. This is something that Dr. Shrinkla Sahai has written, and happy that we've been able to foreground these issues. So I think I have taken more time than I have thought, but I've been able to talk to you about many of these issues. I'm sure some questions have come to your mind. Please feel free to ask me the questions now. I'm going to request Shruti to handle this question business, because I really did not even check where the questions are coming. And here's my email, just in case any of you want to have a private interaction with me or ask me something separately, please feel free. The 8130278747 number is my WhatsApp number. 24 hours. Give me 24 hours to reply to you, and I would be very happy. In case any of you are interested in knowing what are the future plans, well, trainings, partnerships, associations, writing, and the trump card. So when we did the Bangla Arts and the Law series, it was called Shilp Kala Ebam Ain in Bangla. We had the good fortune of having access to the knowledge of many professors of the National University of Juridical Sciences. This is NUJS in Kolkata, one of the national law schools of India, top level. And they were so impressed with what we were trying to do and achieve that there was a lot of enthusiasm, and we have put forth an MOU to them about how we can go forward together. This is a very, I'm expecting that before the year ends, the MOU will sign. I'm saying before the year ends, I'm actually hoping before November ends. But what will it do? It'll have a course on arts and the law as a separate course, a credit course. We are going to do an outreach version of that so that artists can get engaged in it. You know who gave me the idea for this need for artists to benefit, and maybe, you know, certificate course or something like that? Bikram Ghosh. He talked about copyright, but I mean, he talked about it. There's an urgent crying need of copyright. We had this whole incident, not the Mangal Sutra one, but the time when he has taken the Sanganeri prints and made a digital version of that. This is Sabyasachi Mukherjee when he did the H&M, series and all that. So a lot of issues are involved. Whose art is it? Who owns the copyright to it? Who owns it morally? Who owns it legally? How can a community be considered owners of copyright? In my opinion, they should be considered owners of copyright. But we need to have a face of that community then to discuss the copyright with. We can't discuss with one guy here and another guy there. There has to be a method. So basically, we're trying to push that. We want to bring out a digital online journal, which will keep raising these issues. So I've anticipated many of your questions. Please let me know if you have any other questions, and I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Arshiya Ji, for sharing your work with us. I think we can dive directly to the question answer session.
Thank you.
So we have a question from Shiny, and her question is, what can we as a global audience do to speed up this amazing momentum to create awareness on this topic to the wider audience? And I believe you're talking about sexual harassment.
Yes, yes. It was a great session, Ashiji, and amazing information. And I feel so bad that I did not know many of the acts that you were talking about, and the POXO Act, and all those things. So it was great information. So, what can we do as the global citizens of dance who are like trying to create that awareness, like to help your great initiative to move ahead. So
So thank you so much, Aini, for this question, and thank you for the praise. But one of the reasons why I actually did this talk, and I was very grateful when Shruti gave me this opportunity, is because I know that many of you come to India very regularly. And it is important for everybody who comes to India. There is a different system and environment, legal, artistic, social, and it's important that you should be on a strong footing. I I feel very embarrassed. I talked to the survivors of the Gundecha case, and I realized that we have not been supportive enough of the trauma that the survivors have undergone and continue to undergo. And all because of this one thing that, there is social power, there is a sense of entitlement that is okay in India, but not okay elsewhere. So they are coming with the mindset of their own governance, but they are encountering the way governance functions in India, which is a little loosely in some cases and at some points and things like that. So the first thing is that for everybody who comes here, there is need for that awareness. Okay. Secondly, what I would really like to do is do a training so that what if scenarios, what exactly, do you know the codes that are used? No, the gurus tend to use the codes. Now, many of you may be working with female gurus and may think that you're okay, you're safer with the female gurus. Yes, at many levels, you're much safer, but harassment continues. Let me give you an example of harassment versus sexual harassment. So, in sabhas, you have to pay often to perform. This whole insistence that you have to pay is harassment. There has to be a system that is more legal. So I want to make you also aware of what is legal and what is not legal, and where you see illegalities of any sort, including financial, happening. The chances are one thing will lead to another, and this is the quagmire that gets created. So see it, notice it, and know what you can do for it. Okay. If we do one at a time, like you go individually and try and negotiate with the Sabha secretary or something like that, you will be that much weaker. But if you go as Tvam Asi or something like that, you put together a panel of 8 and you negotiate 8 or 10 or 12 dancers, whatever, and you negotiate for all 8 to 12 dancers, they know, better not take any pangas here. So calling out has problems at many levels, and we could discuss that at another thing. But the fear of calling out is a very good protective net. So many people, why is it that none of the senior musicians have supported the survivors? They have too much to lose. The Gundechas can disturb things, disrupt things. So let it go, don't create a problem. So I'm like, problem? Yes, I am problem because I want a safer environment. I want it because I love the arts like crazy. And if this sort of a thing persists, many people, parents and many thinking students will not want to be part of this artistic pursuit. Okay. So harassment does not always have to be sexual, but let me tell you, we have also encountered a case where a very well-known female guru discovered to her complete shock that there was this whole pattern of sexual harassment by her husband. Can you imagine what that was? This was before I had begun working on Unmute, So that's one thing. So what can you do? Learn, convey in whatever way you can, write articles, do talks. If you're doing a workshop, throw in, ask me to prepare for you a one-sheeter on sexual harassment, which I will give to you. You just give to every dancer who is working in an Indian or musician working in an Indian scenario, likely to come to India. They just need to be that little bit prepared.
Thank you for answering that, Arshiya Ji. So we have a two-part question coming from Meera. Meera asks, can you please elaborate on what goes into the process of training? And she also says, as you said, most of the cases dealt with are female survivors. What about others? Are there any laws that include them too? And I
Okay.
believe this includes the LGBTQ community as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. So there are, I will answer the second part first. There are laws that cover LGBTQIA communities, people with disabilities. It's a little weak right now, but we are trying to push even that. That's another parallel track, but not much progress has been made on that. So I have nothing to report as yet. Maybe in a year's time, we will have something on that count. What all constitutes disability? ये बहुत बड़ा सवाल है. This is a very big question because all of us have some disability or the other, So can we all get covered in that? Do we have to declare it? Whatever that. So transgender, yes. If an institution, and this is where your negotiating skill as a group can come in, if an institution has an IC in place, the institution can change its terms of reference to say all women, all who identify as women, and any others who choose to complain. So an IC also involves annual training for both the general public, so the general body, all the students who come in, also the people on the committee. They need to know how to write a report, how to do empathetic hearings, how to question in an empathetic manner, not let their body language let any one person feel threatened or something like that. It has to be in a compassionate surrounding. So the advantage of an IC is that it saves you from going into the criminal justice system and yet can do correctional work. So the big thing about POSH was not just the new definition, but also the redressal mechanism it put into place. So when you have, just as if in the criminal justice system, when the police wants to go tough on you, they will put NDPS also, that's the Drugs Act, they will put Gun Act, they will add the Telephone Act, they will add this, that, and put you under 7-8 acts that it becomes difficult for you to move. Same way, we can, under the IC, put in additional things. The IC is an acceptance that this is a via media. This is not the government criminal justice system. So anything that's missing or complicated in the criminal justice system can, by good intentions, be included in your IC policies, in your IC, as part of your POSH policies. So that's how you include other people in it. But it needs a lot of conversation, a lot of push, pressure, and this entire diaspora community with many strengths that you all have. Many. Do not underestimate your strengths. You can actually push for this together. If you want me to think this through, I will think this through of how Unmute can, I give you a list of options. Here are the possible ways in which we could work together, but you can work individually also on this. You're such a presence, such a strong presence in India now every time. The earlier question was, what goes into the training? I assume you're talking about training that I'm offering to do and things like that.
That's right.
Okay, it's before I do a training, I put in a trigger warning. Serious trigger warning. And I will need somebody to help me who will be able to handle in case somebody can't deal with the truths and the unpleasantness. I enact almost like a sanchari, 100 scenarios of sexual harassment and codes, ways in which it plays out, Ama sari pehen ke dance kara karo. Tum sari mein bade अच्छे लगते. Let me just straighten your back a little bit here. Put your shoulder back. No, 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 no touching. Okay? But you see this happening all the time. Kathak ka nikas, 100 times my guru did tung tang. I didn't know at that time. He would even throw a little stick at my ankles and things like that. That's harassment. That's not done. So many, when I'm constantly asked, so the legal aspects, the what all are examples of harassment. what can you do and how do you ensure that a safe space remains safe? That first you create that safe space and then you keep it as such. The need for having students in any committees and, things like that. Basically, I'll tell you a little bit about the scripts that you will have to play and the scripts that you will hear and how to work it out. So that's it. Sometimes you come away happy with the training. Sometimes the training disturbs you. I had a lot of, so my first training I did not mention that, was the only one that is not available on the net. I called it GASH, Gurus Against Sexual Harassment. I just knew I had to get the gurus on my side. Otherwise, this thing is not going to move. Okay. So desperately, I was emailing everybody, WhatsApping and all that. And I realized that only two types of people were going to join: those who were very progressive and those who adored me and said that whatever Arshiya is doing must be worth following. Chalo, chalo, let's go there and things like that. And so we had only 40 people join us in GASH. I call them my fabulous 40 gurus against sexual harassment. One man, 39 women, and the man left after a while because I think it was just too much for him. Also, he was a gay man, so I don't know how relevant he thought all this is for him. But the women went on and they talked about, God, you're telling us hugging, touching, not happening. Yes, hugging, touching, ideally not happening totally, but the intention pata lag jati hai, like why you're doing it. And please tell me how. I'd much rather that my female guru does, well done, Arshiya, and rather than, but I don't know where I stand kind of thing. So that can be quite emotionally draining. I spent my entire life, and you say you don't want to go follow this up. You want to go and do your PhD overseas. Every dancer deals with this. The guru starts claiming, and how to handle that sort of a situation. So somebody said that if I could live without dance, I would have. But because that's not an option for me, I have to find a way out. So if you have to find a way out, then maybe the training can help you think of something.
Thank you so much, Arshiya ji. I have one final question before we close the session. And this question is for, you know, I was thinking of this as an NRI who might come to India to perform. And, when you face such a situation, what are your basic rights? But I'd also like you to think of this question in terms of, I see a lot of performers from India traveling to the US and outside. What are your rights as an Indian citizen abroad? If you can answer to these
Yes.
two questions,
So
that'll
let
be.
me answer the second part again first. If you go to Unmute.help, we have actually started putting in things there. Once I realized that the government only reneged on contracts, and we are the all goal when it comes to reading any contract and all that, started putting in things. You have visa terms, you can't do certain things, you can do certain things. What happens if your bag is lost, and things like that. So yes, all these aspects from the India points of view. By the way, Unmute.help is colloquially also referred to rights and responsibilities of artists, and it is Indian artists. When it comes to say an American artist, somebody like you, we have actually had not just the Gundecha case. There is a very celebrated case. I don't want to name the girl, but I will name the boy because that's in the public domain for sure. And that is this Dastan Goi person, Mohammed Faruqi. She was a Fulbright fellow who comes to India and then gets to know him, goes back, comes back again to continue the thing. And in the second visit, when she's not covered by Fulbright now, molestation happens. She goes back, returns the third time, and files a case. He goes to jail. but he's now out on bail. It's business as usual. Then I read this amazing piece that she wrote, and you can find it on the net. And she says, I often wonder, why did I do this? Why did I put myself through all this when he is still walking around free? And my whole life has changed. Everything that I had worked for is now not relevant and all that. And she says it was just probably to prove to myself that I did not break. I had the ability to fight. But I want to hear I have the ability to win. And right now we have not reached that point where I know that if you put up a fight on the right causes with the right evidences, you will win. So I hope that with our combined efforts from India and overseas, with the we will be able to get to that point soon. Yeah, this is what I want to tell you. So to know it is very important. To know the law is very, very important. To know what your strengths are is very important. I don't know whether... So in my research work that I was doing before this COVID thing happened, I was working on pioneers of Indian dance in America. Many of those pioneers had come to India, met great gurus of your Chokalingam Pillai and this and that and all that. Many of them have written little acts of meanness that the gurus did. Maybe they thought they were entitled to do that, but the fact that that act is noticed and taken seriously enough to be put in their diaries or in their notes and things like that, I felt that, better that we get a little more open about it than for you to discover. Now, if you sign contracts with any of your gurus, maybe you should put in some carefully thought out clauses that can protect you from this sort of harassment. Because it's not fair financially, emotionally. You're far from your homes when you come to do your thing. And if something unhappy happens, like I'll tell you something that is deeply disturbing me, and it comes under the vertical of copyright. Many gurus today, all of a sudden, this has happened all of a sudden, are actually turning around and saying, you know what, you can't dance my pieces without my express permission. Or somebody who's well known for creating a new dance form, it was not Swayambhu. You learned from somebody. You took grants from the government of India. वो पैसा कहाँ से आता है from the government of India? I give tax. So I own that knowledge. And yes, I choose you as the most likely, or you are chosen, and I agree that you're the right person to be trained and carry forward this learning. It doesn't become yours. How can you then stop the next generation who you yourself have promoted and said, my guru, give grant, give, fellowship, and they've got grant, fellowship, etc. And then suddenly you say, now you can't do this. So this is a very worrying trend. Also, when you learn from a guru, where does the power of the guru stop? I mean, only while you're under the tutelage of the guru do you do the pieces of the guru. When you have started independent school and you are doing very well, can you not do the pieces that you have read? You paid the guru some money, you got the music for paying some money or not paying some money. So I think it is very important to start writing these things down so that you all are protected. This bit about copyright with music. Yeah, I asked permission. You asked permission. They gave you permission verbally. But that algorithm that is fed into the, in whatever, Sony or whatever it is, that has not been told that allow them to dance this. So one of my favorite films, dance films, I am crazy about dance films as well. And some of these questions come in dance films. How long can you show a dance film on your YouTube channel, which a film that is an intellectual property of somebody else and made by that person? You have to be, in your letter, you have to write that we will keep it on for 24 hours, or we will keep it on only for real time, or, it'll be there eternally. Otherwise, you have literally appropriated somebody else's intellectual, wealth. So if in contracts, and contract doesn't have to be like elaborate lawyerese, it can be just like an email exchange or a letter exchange or something like that. That's enough. But with different levels of comprehension. different levels of awareness between diaspora lands and India, I think we need to come onto the same platform, same page, level playing field, because many of these problems of arts and the law happen because of asymmetrical power structures or asymmetrical assumption of rights.
Yeah, a long way to go, Arshiya ji, a long way to go. But I'm very happy that you've started this humongous task. And you truly are a source of inspiration for a lot of us. I'm so
Thank
happy to
you.
hear that you're doing that very intuitive, sounds like a very one-on-one kind of a training program where you get to enact some of the situations that you might really go through, which means that you this is not a theoretical training, but you really will be emotionally involved. And I think
Yes.
it's a wonderful way of training people. um, I will go ahead and share some of the resources that you mentioned over here. A lot of it is available on Unmute.help. I highly recommend everyone to go ahead and look at it. Arshiyaji's email again was made public. I will go ahead and share that again. And Arshiyaji, if you have any other resources, please feel free to share with all of us. A lot of thank yous coming your way. I
Thank
thank
you, my
everyone
dears.
who stayed back so far. Yes, and Ashiji has put her email address out there. It's arshiyasethi@gmail.com. If there are no more questions, we can go ahead and wrap up this conversation here. I will go ahead and make this video recording public and will share
Please.
with everyone. And thank you all once again for joining us. Thank you so much, Arshiya ji. Thank you to
My pleasure.
everyone who asked the questions, and wish you all a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Bye.